October 25, 1944. Aboard the USS Fanshawe Bay, east of Samar Island in the Philippine Sea. The deck hums with the low thrum of engines, salt spray stinging the faces of the lookouts as the first gray light creeps over the horizon. You can almost feel the humid air clinging to your skin, heavy with the promise of rain squalls. Petty Officer Robert Hagan scans the water through his binoculars, his eyes aching from the night watch. Then a flicker, masts piercing the dawn like jagged teeth. Not one, not two, but a forest of them. Pagoda masts, he mutters, heart slamming against his ribs. Japanese battleships. The might of the Imperial Navy bearing down like a storm no one saw coming. Alarms blare across the escort carrier's bridge. Rear Admiral Clifton Sprague, commander of Task Unit 77.4.3, known as Taffy 3, bolts upright from his chart table. His face drains of color as reports flood in. 4 battleships, including the colossal Yamato, the largest warship ever built, displacing 72,000 tons and armed with 18.1-inch guns that could hurl shells 26 miles. Flanked by 6 heavy cruisers, 2 light cruisers, and 11 destroyers under Vice Admiral Takeo Kurita's center force. This isn't a skirmish, it's annihilation on the approach. Sprague's force? Just 6 jeep carriers, flat tops converted from merchant hulls, slow and lightly armed for anti-submarine work, not fleet battles. Escorting them, 3 Fletcher-class destroyers, USS Johnston, Hull, and Heermann, and 4 destroyer escorts, the Samuel B. Roberts, Dennis, John C. Butler, and Raymond. Tin cans against titans. The Japanese had slipped through the San Bernardino Strait overnight, evading the main U.S. fleets under Admirals Halsey and Kincaid. Halsey had chased decoys north, leaving the Leyte Gulf invasion beaches exposed. Now Kurita's armada steams at 20 knots, closing the gap to 17 miles. Shells from the Yamato's secondary batteries already splashed near the carriers, dyed purple and green for spotting, eerie rainbows in the sea foam. Sprague orders an immediate turn to the east, launching every Wildcat fighter and Avenger torpedo bomber in his air groups. But these planes are loaded for ground support, not ship killing. Many carry fragmentation bombs, useless against armored behemoths. On the Johnston's bridge, Commander Ernest E. Evans, a full-blooded Cherokee from Oklahoma, his voice steady but eyes fierce, grasps the enormity. A large Japanese fleet has been sighted, the radio crackles from Sprague. They are 15 miles astern and closing in on us at high speed. Evans doesn't hesitate. He wheels his destroyer towards the enemy, barking orders to his crew of 327 souls. All hands to general quarters. Prepare for torpedo attack. The Johnston, at 2,700 tons, is a gnat to the Yamato's elephant, but Evans knows the math. If the carriers fall, the invasion fails, and the Philippines remain in Japanese hands. Smoke generators belch black clouds to screen the retreating flat tops, but the wind tears it away too fast. Explosions rock the water as Japanese 14-inch shells from the Congo and Haruna bracket the White Plains. One hits home, buckling her deck. Flames lick the sky, and you can imagine the screams of the flight crew scrambling to jettison ordnance. Sprague's voice over TBS radio is calm but urgent. Small boys, interpose. That's code for the destroyers and escorts, affectionately small boys, to place themselves between the carriers and the juggernaut. It's suicide, but necessary. The Heermann and Hull follow Johnston's lead, zigzagging through shellfire that turns the sea into a cauldron of geysers. Evans pushes the Johnston to flank speed, 35 knots, her twin screws churning white wakes. The crew loads torpedoes into the tubes, gunners manning the 5-inch mounts. This is going to be a fight against overwhelming odds from which survival cannot be expected, Evans announces over the intercom, his words echoing through the compartments. We will do what damage we can. Murmurs ripple among the sailors. Fear, yes, but resolve too. Seaman James O'Brien in the engine room wipes sweat from his brow, the heat from the boilers mirroring the inferno outside. As the distance closes to 10 miles, the Johnston emerges from a rain squall, bow slicing through waves. There, in stark relief, the Japanese line, Yamato's superstructure towering like a floating fortress, her guns traversing towards the impudent destroyer. Evans orders a hard starboard, lining up for a torpedo run. The first salvo of Johnston's guns bark out, 5-inch shells arcing towards the heavy cruiser Kumano, lead ship in Kurita's cruiser column. Hits, flames erupt on her bridge, and she veers off, damaged. But retaliation is swift. Shells from the battleship Nagato whistle overhead, one clipping Johnston's mast. The air fills with the acrid smell of cordite and fear. Sprague's carriers launch more planes, their pilots, many on their first combat sortie, diving through flak to drop whatever they have. One Avenger from the St. Lo scores a hit on the cruiser Suzuya with a 500-pound bomb. Chaos reigns. Kurita, mistaking the jeep carriers for fleet carriers, orders a general attack, his ships scattering in pursuit. But as the Johnston charges deeper into the fray, a chilling realization dawns on Evans. The Yamato herself is turning her main battery towards them. Those 18.1-inch guns, each shell weighing as much as a car, could obliterate the destroyer in a single hit. The gap narrows. Torpedoes away or death first.
0700 hours. The Johnston surges forward at 36 knots, her bow rising and slamming through heavy swells, spray drenching the gunners on the open mounts. Commander Ernest Evans stands on the bridge wing, cap tilted back, eyes locked on the massive silhouette of Yamato now less than 9 miles away. Those 9 18.1-inch rifles, each barrel longer than a destroyer is wide, swing ponderously toward him. You can almost hear the distant thunder of the Japanese main batteries, feel the concussion in your chest as shells the size of Volkswagens scream overhead. Evans gives the order. Left full rudder, steady on course 270. The Johnston heels hard to port, presenting her starboard side to the enemy, lining up the 10 Mark 15 torpedoes in her quintuple mounts. Range, 10,000 yards, point blank by battleship standards. The torpedo director, Lieutenant Jack Bechtel, calls out bearings in a voice tight with adrenaline. Set depth 10 feet, high speed. Below decks, the torpedo crews sweat in the stifling heat, slamming the 3,000-pound fish into the tubes. At 0710, Evans commits. Fire torpedoes! A shudder runs through the ship as the 10 torpedoes leap from the tubes in rapid succession, their wake streaking white toward the Japanese line. Evans doesn't wait to see the results. Right full rudder, make smoke! The Johnston whips around, engines screaming in reverse to slow her charge, black smoke billowing from her funnels to hide her retreat. But the Japanese are not idle. Yamato's secondary 6.1-inch batteries open up, joined by the 5-inch guns of nearby destroyers. Shells straddle the Johnston, close, too close. One 14-inch round from the battleship Congo punches through the aft stack, exploding in the after engine room. Steam screams, lights flicker, and the ship lurches as speed drops to 17 knots. 30 men are killed or wounded in seconds. Boiler technician Robert Billings, scalded and bleeding, fights to maintain steam pressure while his shipmates drag the dead aside. Yet Evans presses the attack. Emerging from his own smoke, he re-engages with guns. The Johnston's 5.5-inch back 38s roar in local control, gunners tracking the heavy cruiser Kumano again. Shell after shell slams into her superstructure, fires rage topside, her radar blinded. Kumano shears out of formation, burning fiercely. Now the Heerman joins the fray. Commander Amos Hathaway steers his destroyer through the smoke at 35 knots, closing to 7,000 yards before loosing his own spread of 10 torpedoes straight at Yamato's bow. Hathaway knows the Mark 15s are unreliable at this range, but the threat alone forces Kurita's flagship to turn sharply away to comb the tracks. For precious minutes, the world's largest battleship is forced off course, her massive guns unable to bear on the fleeing carriers. Meanwhile, the smallest fighter of all, the destroyer escort USS Samuel B. Roberts, affectionately called the Sammy B, steams into the fight. Lieutenant Commander Robert W. Copeland, a reserve officer and former lawyer, addresses his crew over the intercom with calm defiance. This will be a fight against overwhelming odds from which survival cannot be expected. We will do as much damage as possible. At 376 crew and only 2 5-inch guns, the Roberts charges the heavy cruiser Chokai at 20 knots, weaving through shell splashes taller than her mast. Copeland closes to 4,000 yards, insanely close, and opens fire. The first salvos hit Chokai's bridge and superstructure. Return fire is devastating. An 8-inch shell tears through the Roberts' thin plating, exploding in the forward boiler room. Steam and flame erupt, yet the little ship keeps shooting, scoring hit after hit on the cruiser's belt armor. Back with the carriers, the situation is desperate. Japanese shells bracket the Gambier Bay. Direct hits rock her flight deck. Fires rage amidships, and she begins to lose way. The White Plains dodges a full salvo from Yamato herself. The colored splashes rise like deadly flowers around her hull. Admiral Sprague signals 7th Fleet, enemy battleships and cruisers bearing down on us. In the midst of this chaos, the American planes, Wildcats and Avengers launched with whatever ordnance they carried, dive again and again through murderous flak. Some drop depth charges on battleships, others strafe decks with 50 caliber machine guns. One pilot, hedge-hopping the waves, actually scores a bomb hit on the cruiser Tone. The harassment is constant, maddening. Kurita, aboard Yamato, watches the frantic American response. He has lost the element of surprise, his formation is scattered, and now these infuriating destroyers are attacking like terriers. But the range is closing. The Gambier Bay is mortally wounded, listing heavily, and the Johnston, battered and burning, is turning once more toward the enemy line. What will Evans do with a crippled ship and half his guns silenced?
0730 hours. Smoke and rain squalls cloak the sea, but the thunder of guns never stops. The USS Johnston limps at 17 knots, trailing oil and steam, her aft engine room flooded, 2 of her 5 guns silenced forever. Fires rage amidships, yet Commander Ernest Evans refuses to break off. Blood streaks his khakis from shrapnel wounds, but he stands firm on the bridge, voice hoarse if he orders another attack. Give them everything we've got left. The Johnston turns toward the heavy cruisers Chikuma and Haguro, now closing fast on the crippled carriers. At 7,000 yards, suicidal range for a destroyer, she opens fire with her 3 remaining 5-inch guns. Shells hammer Chikuma's superstructure. One penetrates her torpedo tubes, triggering a massive secondary explosion that rips the cruiser's stern apart. Chikuma slows, burning furiously. The Johnston's gunners cheer through the pain, hands blistered from rapid fire, magazines nearly empty. But the Japanese answer brutally. An 8-inch salvo from Haguro slams home, 3 hits in quick succession. One shell explodes in the forward fire room, killing nearly everyone inside. Another tears through the bridge, shredding the pilot house. Evans is thrown to the deck, his left hand mangled, fingers gone. He wraps a handkerchief around the stump, climbs back to his feet, and takes the helm himself when the steering engine fails. Steady as she goes, he growls, blood dripping onto the compass. Now the Samuel B. Roberts, still fighting like a battleship in miniature, duels the heavy cruiser Chokai. Lieutenant Commander Copeland weaves his tiny ship through towering shell splashes, closing to 3,000 yards. The Roberts' 2 5-inch guns fire so rapidly the barrels glow red. Hit after hit stitches across Chokai's deck. One shell detonates her torpedo battery in a cataclysmic blast. Chokai staggers, dead in the water, her crew abandoning ship as flames reach her magazines. The cost is horrific. Multiple 8-inch salvos rip into the Roberts. Her single torpedo tube is wrecked before it can fire. The forward gun is knocked out. Below decks, Seaman First Class Jackson McCoy fights flooding in the engine room, water rising to his waist as pumps fail. Copeland's voice over the intercom remains calm. "We're still in the fight, boys. Keep shooting." Across the battlefield, the USS Hull takes the full fury of battleships Congo and Haruna. Commander Leon Kintberger has already fired his torpedoes and emptied his guns into the enemy line. Now, with no weapons left but courage, he steers Hull in a deliberate suicide run straight at Congo, drawing fire to shield the carriers. Shell after shell strikes home, 14-inch, 8-inch, 5-inch. The Hull is reduced to a floating wreck, listing heavily, fires everywhere. At 0840, Kintberger gives the order, abandon ship. As her survivors leap into the shark-infested water, Hull rolls over and sinks, her battle ensign still flying. The Gambier Bay, the only carrier to fall this day, is pounded mercilessly by the cruiser Chikuma and Yamato's secondary batteries. Hit after hit opens her hull, flight deck aflame, engines dead, she loses headway and wallows. At 9:07, Captain Walter Vuegg orders abandon ship. Hundreds of men slide down ropes into the sea as Gambier Bay capsizes and sinks, the only American carrier lost to surface gunfire in the entire war. Yet every minute the destroyers and escorts buy with their blood allows the remaining carriers to pull away. The constant air attacks, planes strafing, dropping bombs dry, even making dummy runs add to Kurita's confusion. He has already lost 3 heavy cruisers. Suzuya, Chokai, and Chikuma will all sink before the day ends. His formation is shattered, radio traffic chaotic. Aboard Yamato, Vice Admiral Kurita stares at the smoke-shrouded horizon. Reports flood in, American fleet carriers approaching from the north, a false sighting, torpedoes everywhere, relentless air attacks. He does not know he faces only escort carriers and destroyers. He believes he is in the jaws of Halsey's 3rd Fleet. At 9:11, he makes the fateful decision, cease action, general retreat. The mighty center force turns north, withdrawing through San Bernardino Strait, leaving the Leyte invasion beaches safe. But for the small boys, the fight isn't over yet. The battered Johnston, now a drifting hulk, still fires her last gun at passing Japanese destroyers. At 9:45, overwhelmed, Evans gives the final order, abandon ship. As he steps off the bridge, a sailor offers to help him into the water. Evans refuses, saluting his crew as they go over the side. He is never seen again. The sea is littered with survivors clinging to rafts and wreckage. Japanese destroyers steam past, some crews gesture menacingly, others simply sail on. But one thing is clear, the impossible has happened. Tiny tin cans have turned back the most powerful surface fleet Japan could muster.
0930 hours. The Philippine Sea, once a maelstrom of fire and steel, now whispers with the moans of wounded men and the lap of waves against shattered hulls. Oil slicks spread like black blood across the water, flames flickering on debris from the sunken Gambier Bay, Hull, and Samuel B. Roberts. The Johnston, her bow dipping low, finally succumbs at 10:10, rolling to starboard and slipping beneath the surface with a groan of tortured metal. You can picture the scene. Hundreds of sailors bobbing in life jackets, clinging to floater nets and overturned whaleboats, their faces smeared with soot and fear. Rescue is agonizingly slow. The remaining carriers, Fanshawe Bay, White Plains, Callanan Bay, Kitkin Bay, and St. Lo, steam away under smoke and squalls, their decks crowded with returning planes low on fuel. But the St. Lo meets her own fate. At 10:50, a kamikaze from a new wave of Japanese aircraft crashes into her flight deck, detonating her torpedo storage in a massive fireball. She sinks in 30 minutes, adding more survivors to the sea. Admiral Sprague, transferred to the Fanshawe Bay, coordinates what he can, but the priority is evasion. Help will come from other Taffy units and distant destroyers, but for now, the men in the water endure. Seaman James Fahey from the Gambier Bay treads water for hours, sharks circling below. He watches a Japanese destroyer approach. Hearts stop as machine guns train on them, but it veers off without firing. Acts of mercy or simple disinterest? Not all are so lucky.
Some report Japanese sailors throwing grenades or firing rifles into clusters of Americans, though these accounts vary. The sea claims its own. Exhaustion, wounds, and exposure take a toll. Of Johnston's 327 crew, 141 perish, including Commander Evans. The Hull loses 253 of 336, the Roberts 89 of 178. As the sun climbs, rescue planes from Taffy 2 and 3 spot the wreckage fields. PBY Catalinas and destroyer escorts from Leyte Gulf race in. The USS Dennis, herself damaged earlier, picks up survivors from the Hull. Men are hauled aboard, wrapped in blankets, given coffee laced with medicinal brandy. Stories pour out in hoarse whispers. Evans' final salute, Copeland's unyielding calm on the Roberts, the sheer audacity of charging battleships with pop guns. By nightfall, the tally emerges. Taffy 3 has lost 2 escort carriers, Gambier Bay and St. Lo, 2 destroyers, Johnston and Hull, and 1 destroyer escort, Samuel B. Roberts. Over 1,500 Americans dead or wounded. But the Japanese toll is staggering. 3 heavy cruisers sunk, Suzuya, Chokai, Chikuma. 3 more heavily damaged, Kumano, Haguro, Tone. Kurita's center force, bloodied and disorganized, retreats without breaking through to the invasion beaches. The Battle off Samar, part of the larger Battle of Leyte Gulf, the largest naval engagement in history, marks the effective end of the Imperial Japanese Navy as a fighting force. In the aftermath, honors flow like the tides. Commander Evans is posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor, the first Native American in the Navy to receive it, for his indomitable courage and brilliant professional skill. His citation reads like legend, leading his ship in a single-handed attack to divert overwhelming enemy fire. Lieutenant Commander Copeland of the Roberts earns the Navy Cross. His ship is dubbed the destroyer escort that fought like a battleship. The entire Taffy 3 receives the Presidential Unit Citation, a rare collective valor award. The battle's lessons echo through naval doctrine. It exposes flaws in U.S. command structure, Halsey's pursuit of decoys left the strait unguarded, and highlights the Jeep carrier's vulnerability. Yet it glorifies the destroyermen's ethos, protect the fleet at all costs. Evans' words, "We will do what damage we can," become a mantra for underdogs everywhere. Historians debate Kurita's retreat, fuel shortages, fear of air attack, or simple battle fatigue. He later admits underestimating the Americans' ferocity, mistaking desperation for superior force. Today, the wrecks lie silent on the seabed, explored by divers like those from the Paul Allen expedition in 2019, who located the Sammy B at 22,000 feet, the deepest shipwreck ever found. Memorials stand. The USS The Sullivans, DD 537, honors the spirit, while annual reunions keep the tales alive. You can almost hear the ghosts, the roar of guns, the splash of torpedoes, the cheers of improbable victory. The battle off Samar wasn't just a clash of steel, it was human will against the machine of war. Tiny ships, outsized hearts, and in that defiance, a reminder, sometimes the smallest stand tallest. What if Kurita had pressed on? Would the war have turned? 0945 hours, October 26, 1944. Aboard the retreating Yamato, Vice Admiral Takeo Kurita paces the flag bridge, his face etched with the weight of command. The sea behind him is a graveyard of smoke and sinking hulls, his own cruisers listing, American survivors dotting the waves like forgotten buoys. He had the Leyte Gulf landings in his sights, troop transports, supply ships, the soft underbelly of MacArthur's invasion. Press on and perhaps shatter the American foothold in the Philippines. But doubt gnaws at him. False reports of Halsey's carriers closing in, fuel gauges dipping low, his fleet scattered and bleeding. He signals the turn north. a decision that will haunt naval historians for decades. What if he hadn't? Imagine the alternate dawn. Kurita ignores the phantom threats, reforms his line, and steams south at full speed. The remaining Taffy 3 carriers, now without their destroyer screen, would fall quickly under Yamato's guns. Shells rain down on the beaches of Leyte, where 132,000 American troops dig in, their supplies vulnerable. Transports explode in fireballs, landing craft splinter under cruiser fire. MacArthur's famous return, "I have returned," turns to retreat. The invasion stalls, perhaps collapses. Japan gains months, maybe a year, to fortify the home islands. Kamikaze attacks intensify, Okinawa delayed or bloodier. The atomic bombs? Still dropped, but on a nation with renewed resolve, dragging the war into 1946. You can feel the chill of that possibility, the extra graves, the prolonged suffering. Historians like David Hobbs and James Hornfisher dissect it in books like The Last Stand of the Tin Can Sailors. They argue Kurita's retreat was rational. His force, after enduring submarine attacks in the Palawan Passage, losing the heavy cruisers Atago, Maya, and Takao, and airstrikes in the Sibuyan Sea, sinking the super-battleship Musashi, was depleted. Ammo low, crews exhausted after 48 hours of combat. Kurita himself, in post-war interviews, cited the disarray. The enemy was superior in numbers and in the air. But doubt lingers. Was it caution or cowardice? Or simple humanity, the admiral sparing his men from certain destruction? In reality, the battle sealed Japan's naval doom. Leyte Gulf as a whole, encompassing Samar, Surigao Strait, Cape Engano, and Sibuyan Sea, cost Japan 4 carriers, 3 battleships, 10 cruisers, and 9 destroyers. The Imperial Navy, already crippled after Midway and the Marianas Turkey Shoot, never mounted another major offensive. Kamikazes became their desperate weapon, but the tide had turned irrevocably toward Allied victory. Back in the water, the survivors' ordeal stretches into days. Shark attacks claim lives, men vanishing with a scream and a swirl of red. Dehydration sets in under the tropical sun. Some drink seawater, hallucinating rescue. Finally, on October 26th, destroyers like the USS Helm and Richard M. Rowell arrive, plucking oil-soaked sailors from the sea. Medics tend wounds on deck. Chaplains offer solace. Rear Admiral Sprague, reflecting later, calls it a miracle of divine intervention. The men of Taffy 3 become legends. Evans' Cherokee heritage inspires tales of warrior spirit. Copeland's lawyerly precision in combat earns him a hero's welcome home. The story spreads like wildfire in the press. Tin cans versus battleships headlines scream from Stars and Stripes. President Roosevelt praises the gallant stand in fireside chats, boosting morale on the home front. In Japan, the defeat is hushed. Kurita is relieved of command, his career quietly ended. Post-war, the admirals meet. Sprague and Kurita shake hands in reconciliation, 2 old warriors pondering the fog of war. This battle reshapes naval warfare forever. It vindicates the destroyer screen's role, influencing designs like the Cold War's Arleigh Burke class. Jeep carriers evolve into amphibious assault ships.
And the human element? It underscores that technology bows to tenacity. As Admiral Nimitz notes, the battle off Samar was one of the most heroic actions in naval history. Films like Tora 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 nod to it. Documentaries recreate the chaos with CGI Yamatos thundering through digital seas. Yet the deepest legacy is personal. Survivors like gunner's mate Paul Carr of the Samuel B. Roberts, mortally wounded but firing his gun until it exploded, earning a posthumous Silver Star, embody sacrifice. Reunions at places like the Tin Can Sailors Association echo with toasts to the fallen. And for the families, letters home, medals delivered with folded flags. As the sun sets on that fateful day, the Philippine Sea calms, waves erasing the scars. The small boy's charge, against odds that should have crushed them, proves that courage can bend history. Kurita turned back, the war ended in 45, and the world moved on. But in the quiet moments, you wonder, what if? In that question lies the enduring power of Samar, a testament to the fragile line between triumph and tragedy.